I'm Dom,
And I'm Al.
and you're watching the Resilient Shift podcast presented by Better Days. It's been a minute. It's been a few weeks since we've been able to film an episode. Life has gotten kind of crazy the past few weeks for the better, for the better. But now we're finally back. We're here to bring you guys another episode, and let's hop right into it.
Yeah, so like Dom said, it's been a little bit since we've been on. We've had a few exciting things going on, just general life stuff going on, been pretty busy. But I want to talk to you about we've had our first few episodes with guests on.
Yeah.
Right. Beginning, it was just you and I kind of vibing, going back and forth. But talk to me how it's been to have guests come on and adapt to that and what it's been like for you.
I think it's great. First of all, I think it's super special that, when I reach out to these people, like connections that I've made, relationships, and I'm like, hey, like I want you to share your mindset and your story with, you know, my audience. Um, and it's been really, really special to see people like being so willing to dive like headfirst and like come in the pod and, willing to share their successes, their failures, um, and their perspective. So I think that's something that's been, really special and, how people have kind of bought into what we're doing a little bit. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also cool for them to tell their story and see it from a different lens, like when they listen to it and
Sure. Yeah,
can
it's
hear,
definitely a little reflective
yeah,
for
hear how
sure.
inspiring they are. The coolest part for me, and this has nothing to do with having guests on, but when we've been out and people stop us and they're like, "We've been
Yeah.
listening to the pod," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh my
yeah,
gosh." Or people we haven't seen in a while just saying they love what we've been
yeah.
doing. What Tell me about that. How does it feel to have people recognize it, to talk to you
Yeah.
about it?
No, it's been cool, especially from, like, you know, friends obviously support, but then, like, you kinda reach, like, outer circle friends or people that you haven't seen or people that I went to school with, and they'll see us out and they'll be like, "Oh my god, I love the pod episode." And it's like, wow, like, we really are reaching people and we're doing the right thing. People love it, and I got recognized a few weeks ago by it was actually the coolest thing in the world. Someone that works with Tal actually at the gym that I don't know, but she obviously watches the pod and follows, Better Days, and she, like, literally just came up to me and, like, tapped me on the shoulder. She's like, "Are you Dom from Better Days?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is absolutely wild." She was like, "Oh, I'm so and so," and it was great. Got to talk to her for a few minutes, but that was, like, the first time that, like, I was approached by someone that, like, I didn't know.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, that is cool. I Really cool for me. I was in a department meeting at work and someone brought the podcast up and they're
Yeah.
like, I was talking about you in like an anti-bullying committee and we talked about resiliency and she told me that one of our social workers has a podcast and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm like being talked about in other rooms.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. But it also, do you ever find yourself holding yourself to higher expectations now that people are recognizing you, seeing you, or has that not set in yet?
Um, I think it definitely makes me want to make this podcast more professional. As you can see, we have a new mic here. We're working with a little bit of a soundboard now, hopefully better audio quality. Um, I think in that respect it does. It just makes me want to, become more professional in whatever it is I'm doing. Um, but I don't think I hold myself to, higher standards because I really, you know, it may feel like we're doing so much, but at the end of the day, we're really just talking about our experiences, which I think needs to be done, should be, more commonplace. Um, but really, I'm just sharing my story with people who, take the time and are willing to hear it, and I want to hear theirs. So I guess I don't approach it any differently. I just want to make it better. You
Yeah,
know,
definitely. Do you find it easier to share your story that you've gotten positive feedback?
for sure. I think that's definitely part of it. Yeah, yeah, it definitely gets easier to share when especially when, friends of friends are like, "Oh my god, I watched the pod, like, we love that episode." Um, I think it definitely gets easier because it feels like you're kinda gaining a little bit of momentum and, like, people aren't necessarily critiquing it in a way. Um, I don't know, I mean, I'm welcome to
Mhm.
criticism, love feedback, but, I think it traveled over my words, it definitely gets easier, I think, with repetition.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah, of course. And now talk to me. We said how we've been up to some exciting things.
Yeah.
So recently we were at Coho Coffee House in Patchogue,
Yep.
kind of like our first in-person event that we ventured on our own. right? We've been to a lot of charities where we've joined them or sponsored them,
Yeah.
but this was kind of our first event solo.
Yeah.
Obviously with the help of Coho and
Yep.
Rob, their owner there. But talk to me how that was setting up your table and having your hats out for
Yeah.
strangers to say.
At first, it was definitely nerve-wracking. I mean, absolutely love, appreciate the opportunity. Shout out Rob Coutron. Definitely look up to him as a, kind of an entrepreneur and kind of, forging his own path. I think he just closed on the building next door,
Mhm.
but they'll be expanding Kahala, which I think is awesome. But yeah, I got in contact with Rob through Nick Page, actually. Talk about community. That's community. And he connected us, and Rob was like, "Hey, we would love to have you guys in. I've read your mission." They kind of they have a good rush on the weekend, which was awesome. And they allow vendors to come in and kind of, get themselves out there, especially small brands, which he loves to support, which, I definitely appreciate. And I hope one day, if I'm fortunate enough to be in kind of Rob's position, that I could do that for, you know, the 20-year-old me that's doing it now. Uh, but we got to go in there, we set up a table, we had all our hats. This was really one of the first events where we had a pretty good quantity of hats, kind of be able to slowly build to the point where we have a little bit of an inventory to kind of bring. In prior situations and events that we've been at, we would show off our stuff, but we'd have a QR because we couldn't carry inventory, and then it would be up to, people to, like, be willing to either buy right on the spot or, go home and then they gotta find it again. It just wasn't conducive for getting your brand out there and your identity. Um, so I think that was definitely a huge success for us. Um yeah, we sold a lot of hats. I think we sold close to, like, 12 hats, um, which is awesome, and we got to meet so many great people who, were willing to learn about our brand, wanted to kinda hear my story and, kinda bought in, right? I think that's really what it's about, and I think the community in Coho really is just a reflection of Rob, um, and the kinda energy he brings to every single day. We had these strangers walking up to our table and being like, "This is cool. What is this?" And then I would talk to them. Met another individual actually with the same name as me, Dom. Um, and his mother sadly passed away from cancer. So he kind of heard our mission statement. And then he, was brave enough to kind of share his story with cancer with us because everybody has one. I feel
Mhm.
like everyone's impacted in some way. Um, yeah, and he talked to us about his mom and, he loved it and he bought a hat and that for me is really special and, like, also, like, little stuff like that, like, especially him having the same name as me,
Mhm.
like, is to me, like, is, like, signs that, like, I'm doing the right thing or, like, I'm on, like, the right path. Like, I'll give you another example, kind of off topic here, but, I'm currently substitute teaching in a school, you know that, and I was kind of prepping for an interview, getting ready. Did, like, some mock interview questions with a few, like, mentor teachers of mine, and then, I felt good after our, like, mock questions, but I was still kinda nervous, and I was like, I really wanna do well, I really wanna, make a good impression, and then on my walk out of that classroom, a student walked up to me, and it was Teacher Appreciation Week, and he wanted to give, like, his teacher appreciation note to me. Which I think is cool because 'cause I'm a sub. I haven't this particular student I haven't had too many times, but, I remember him, and the note said, "Hand this to a teacher that made you feel like you truly mattered." That to me was a sign that I needed at that time to be like, "I'm doing the right thing, I'm in the right place, and I'm on the right path." So I think that is another kind of I get those signs a lot actually, which is cool, and I think maybe I get them because I look for them,
Mhm.
maybe a little. Um, yeah, that was another kind of one of those moments. Back to call, I'm sorry for that little ramble. Um, yeah, no, it was a great experience. Definitely, got our brand identity out, within the community a little bit more, and we like meeting people. We like talking to people, hearing their stories, telling them about our stories. I love community, right? Like how can you get people connected and involved? And I think that's what Coho did for us for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've talked a lot about it in our beginning episodes about sometimes you don't get that traction to your website, or maybe you do and you're just not getting the sales.
Yeah.
And sometimes we could be our biggest enemy where we're like, well, people don't
Hmm.
like my hat. People aren't buying it. But maybe there is other reasons to it. And I think in person, these events, they come up to you, they compliment it. They might not buy it, but you're still getting that positive feedback.
For sure.
Or
Yep.
behind the computer, you don't
Absolutely.
get that.
Yep.
So I kind of think it helps you where they're still stopping, they're still taking the effort to talk to you.
Hmm.
And online that doesn't happen, and I think we're a little bit more negative with ourselves, or if we
Yeah.
don't get the sale,
Hmm.
still stings a little bit where someone comes up and they look at the hats and they don't buy them, but then you still get the smiles and the compliments from those other people.
Yeah.
That I think is a really big help. Did that help give you any more confidence or kind of acceptance that you are doing the good thing?
Yeah. I think it does. I've gotten a lot of exposure through my brand and a lot of, like I said, community, meeting new people. But more often than not, it's like somebody that I know through somebody.
Yeah.
So to really be out in the community and like just like these like stranger customers who are just coming in for their morning coffee, going about their day, to kind of take a second to look at it and be like, that's pretty cool. And like not only do I like the message, like I like the way it looks. And that is definitely huge. I think it was definitely a big, motivation for me, and it makes me want to design more stuff. How can I further my brand? I have like so many ideas like
Yeah.
going through my head, and like, I think often like in terms of like entrepreneurship or honestly anything that you're pursuing, like it comes in waves of like your motivation. Um, and you need events like this and things like this to happen in order for you to kind of get that juice going again. Um, and I think I've learned that it's okay that it comes in waves,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes, like, this is one of my passions, right? But sometimes I'm like, I dive in head first, and other times I'm like, I feel like I have so many like other fish to fry right now
Yeah.
that like I can't dedicate what I want to dedicate to it. But I saw this photo on LinkedIn the other day, actually. Um, it was about consistency,
Mhm.
and it was like 6 cups. Um, and it said like, "This isn't consistency," and it was every single cup, like, filled perfectly to, like, the same amount, and then below it, it said, "This is consistency," and, it had 6 cups, and, like, 1 cup, like, had, like, an inch of liquid in it,
Mm.
and then the other one had, like, an ounce, and the other one, like, was completely filled to the top, but every single cup had something, and I think that's, kinda how I'm trying to approach my business now, which I think really it almost feels like I'm doing less, but I feel like I'm doing the right things more.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's slowly, starting to show a little bit.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what the motto on your crew neck says, to show up, right?
Yep.
I think it's you don't have to give 100% every day. If you give 20 some days, then the next day you give 70,
Yep.
right? It's all about that, and I think sometimes if it was good all the time, you wouldn't appreciate it as much, right?
No.
Sometimes you need to fail or you need to not get the best feedback
Hmm.
to either take a step back or that mere motivator, and then the good makes that
Yeah.
much more of a win, I think. If
Absolutely.
if we won every day, it would be like, "All right, this is great," but
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
you'd
Yeah. Yeah.
appreciate it as much.
Yep.
So I do think you gotta take the small wins as much as the big
For
ones.
sure.
Now I wanna hear, so we sold a lot of our hats, right? And we've
Yeah.
talked about it before that we have tried to do this new thing with hat of the month,
Yeah.
right? And each hat either is dedicated to someone special, a survivor,
Sure.
or something we learned from that person. It has a message to it.
Hmm.
So I know right now you're working on one.
I am.
Do you wanna reveal a
Oh,
little bit
put me on the
about it?
spot. No, I'll drop it. I
Um,
love it. So our new hat is a nice like neutral two-tone hat, cream and black. Um, and it has embroidery front on the front. It says "Stack 'em," with Better Days Company Long Island on it. And on the side there are six, six W's stacked in a pyramid. Um, and this is a concept that I like kind of I guess stumbled on like as I got older,
mm,
especially through treatment, and even more so now that I'm kind of in this like mindset driven community. You got to stack small wins, right? So and those wins compound over time, and that's how you kinda build your confidence, and I think in turn, like, builds your identity in a way. Um, so that's kind of are you okay? You love the hat that much, huh? I'll just keep going, don't worry. Little technical difficulty, we'll be back. We'll be back. It's alright. Yeah, you don't have to whisper, you can cut it out.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'll start from, like, the explaining the hat, so I cut it after your question.
Yes.
Yeah, so we are working on a new hat right now. It's called the Stack 'em hat.
Yep.
It's a nice cream and black two-tone hat, with embroidery font on the front. It says "Stack 'em" and the Better Days Company Long Island logo. And on the side, there's 6 W's kinda stacked in a pyramid. Um, and kind of the message behind it, which is something that I think I learned over time, like, especially through chemo, but even more so that I'm in, like, this mindset-driven community now, um, is that you have to stack small wins, right? You gotta recognize a win, and you gotta put the tally down, right? Um, and I think over time, those ones compound, right? If you're doing the right things, doing the little things, um, and as they compound over time, you know, you get confidence, and I think in that, you kinda build your identity in a sense. And that's kinda what it's about. You just gotta stack them. It's not always about the big thing, but how can you compound these wins? And then you stand on all like, you stand on the pile of wins that you got, and now you're right next to the big
Mhm.
thing, right? And I think that's kind of the mindset that I've tried to take throughout my life at this point. Um, and I think it's also like a realistic reflection of what real life's like, you know?
Definitely.
All you can do is sometimes stack them. you
Yeah,
know?
I love it. I think that's a great kind of mentality that you have, and I think sometimes we have to be willing to accept a win for what it is, even if it wasn't the goal we set, right? Sometimes I think we set really big goals and we might not be achieving what we
Yeah,
want, and be willing to either adjust our goal, um, and break it into pieces to
yeah,
then get to that far goal, right? Like celebrate your progress along the way.
yeah,
Don't beat yourself up for not getting there in the time you wanted to.
yeah, and, like, even more so, I feel like I think about it a little bit differently than that in the sense of, like, you gotta like, there's wins that you don't even know are
Yeah.
wins, right? Like, I, say I'm a routine guy, but, like, I fall easily out of my routine, and, like, so if I make my bed every morning, like, win. Like, that's a micro win, right?
They do say if you make your bed every day, there's some scientific thing that
Oh,
you're on the
really?
right path.
Okay, so I've heard, someone once told me, "If you do nothing else for the day, just make your bed."
Mm,
Um, and I think also, we go back to the bed thing specifically, I think there's power in, starting your day like that.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you make your bed perfect or is it a little messed up?
I make it pretty perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't say I'm, a hospital,
Okay.
corners guy, but, the blanket's nice spread out,
Mm,
tag's always at the bottom.
okay.
Yeah,
That is, yeah. All
yeah.
right.
So, I wouldn't say I'm, crazy with it,
Okay. You still make it. So that's
but
all that
yeah, but
matters.
it's definitely more than, just a quick,
Yeah. No, I love
yeah,
that. And I do love the concept of stacking your wins, celebrating your wins. Especially, I'm a social worker, work with like a lot of the younger kiddos now. So I'm super big into what's one good thing that happened today
yeah,
or
absolutely.
the whole growth mindset. Like don't
Uh-huh.
say I can't do this. I can't do this yet.
Yeah,
And I think that also connects
yep.
to recognizing your wins, even if it's big, even if
Mhm.
it's small, and recognizing your friends' wins too. I think sometimes if we go
Sure.
out of our way to tell someone they're doing a good job,
Yeah.
they need it, right? Sometimes people aren't able to
Yeah,
celebrate it themselves. So I want to encourage our listeners to maybe celebrate others' wins as well, but
for
don't
sure.
forget you
Yeah.
because you're important too.
I think it's also, if you could find others' wins is, I think, always great, but, it's also kinda selfish,
Mm,
like, one of my buddies, like, win or, like, they went for a job interview and they think it went well or whatever, like, selfishly, I feel like that's a win for me.
mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
that's special to hear.
yeah, so I definitely, I think it's important, and it's something that didn't always do.
Mm,
When especially when I was in chemo, I was just having a hard time, and
yeah,
I didn't buy into that as
mhm,
much as I do now.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's hard because sometimes it's like you're grieving over what could have been or what should have been, right? Like, I
sure.
should be at school right now with my friends, and it's that
Yeah.
grief of what life could have been for you at that time,
Uh,
but it is good now that you are achieving those things you wanted to
yeah,
once before. I also think, and I'm not gonna say the quote exactly right, but it reminds me of sometimes we look for other people to clap for us that we forget to clap for ourselves,
yeah,
and we're so focused on either not having a supporter or people happy for
sure.
us that we're then not happy for us, so sometimes you just have to be your biggest cheerleader.
Yep.
Like, don't look for someone else to clap for you, like, go out, do your thing, and celebrate.
Yeah,
So I think
definitely.
that's important, and it connects to the hat, so coulda
Yeah.
just given you a marketing campaign right there.
Yeah, that's it. Stack them. There will be, like, other merch that goes
Mm,
with it. I won't say too much, but a lot of, like, nice, like, luxury,
mm,
casual type items,
mm.
as well, which I'm super excited for as kinda we get into the nice weather.
Yeah, I love it. And now we're on the topic about winning and kind of that championship mentality. Want to bring up the Knicks, right? I wish that I was
Yes.
talking about the Rangers right now, but we know they did not make it in the playoffs.
No,
So at least we got the Knicks, right? I
no.
do have to say I probably have turned you into an avid Knick fan.
Yeah, no, I really was not a basketball kind of, like, fan at all, like, I
Mhm.
rarely ever watched basketball. Um, and then you kinda, like, turned me onto it during March Madness. I have a buddy that goes to UConn, so that definitely, helped. Um, but yeah, it kinda started March Madness, and then it was like, "Oh, next playoffs are coming," and I was like, "Alright, I get behind this a little bit," especially since you love to watch the games and you like to go out to watch the games, so I'm like, "Go out and hang out, watch the games," I'm like, "It's better than that," so, yeah, no, I've definitely kinda bought into the Knicks a little bit. I'm a big OG fan.
Yeah, I like it. And I want to talk about their last game because that wasn't a typical playoff turnout, right? We had a do or die game for the Hawks, and they definitely showed up to play, but I think early on it was a blowout. They were down by 30 something points
Yeah.
before the third quarter even started. So how do you think that you can stay in that type of game knowing it's do or die and knowing you're down by that much?
Um, I think there's a lot of, at least factors for me when I'm in that kind of situation, and, like, disclaimer, not trying to compare myself to anyone who plays professional basketball by any means, but, how do you handle situations where, you're looking for an outcome or you feel like there's no choice? Um, I think part of it in terms of staying in the mindset is, like, you have to. Like, if
Mm,
you don't, like, it's wraps. Like,
yeah,
it's not gonna go your way. So I think you're kind of forced to. Um, I think there's also an element of fear, right? If I don't stay in this, like, it's not gonna go the way I want it
mm,
to. Um, and I think it's also, like, kinda like the ability to fall back on, like, what you know and, like, the work that you've put in and, like,
yeah,
that, like, this is what I can equate it to. Like, I had a job interview for teaching. And, it was my first interview. I was I don't wanna say I was that nervous, but, like, it gets nervous
yeah,
when, you sit down and it's like, the stakes are high, you're like, "I want a job, I
mm,
wanna set myself up for my career." Um, and then, you start answering these questions, you start conversing with these, wonderful people. I realized that I quickly started to, like, fall back on what I knew and what, I had prepared in terms of not only my, like, entire college career and degree,
mm,
um, but just, like, how, like, my, like, education philosophy has just evolved.
mhm,
Um, and I know, like, in terms of athletics, in roller hockey, we call it the flow state, right? Where you're just kinda rolling. and you're not really thinking about it. You just you know what you wanna say, and that's, how it comes out, and I think that that was kind of my relation to what we were just talking about with the Knicks and, like, fall back on what you know,
Yeah.
right? You know you've put in the work, you know you've put in the reps, like, it's just another layup, back to the line,
Mm.
right? Um, I think I think that's how you stay kinda grounded in those moments, or at least that's how I try to.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think there's always that you wanna tell people anything is possible, right? You wanna go into this like, "Maybe I can come back." Is it gonna be a crazy comeback that might not be that possible? Yes, but almost go into it with that. And then as the game went on, the lead kept getting bigger and bigger. As you think
Yeah,
everyone kinda knew what the outcome was gonna be, but even if you know you're gonna lose a game, I think it's how you walk off that court, right? And how you hold yourself. Did you give it your all and play to that buzzer
yeah,
went off? And I always say you wanna when your legs get tired, it's running with your heart, right? So same thing in a
sure,
game, that you want to leave it all out there, be a leader, play with class, and
yeah,
bring your other teammates up, right? Maybe it's a guy that's on the bench that he's getting a chance to now go in and just cheer for him, right?
yeah,
Like make him feel important. And whether you win or lose, especially a high stake game, right? Do or
mhm,
die, you got to hold yourself up to
yeah,
high standards and leave it all out on that
yep,
court.
I think so. Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think there's also, like, s I don't know how to articulate this good, but, like, there's something dangerous about somebody that's got nothing to
Yeah.
lose, right? And if you're losing already, well, you go back to the Knicks example, like, got nothing to lose. You lose it, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, oftentimes is the most dangerous guy or team in the room, right? The team that's, they got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
They Yeah, I don't know how to
No,
explain it,
yeah.
but they
I
got
also think
nothing
it
to
makes
lose.
me think the dangerous person in the room is a competitor, someone who wants to compete, whether they are
Yeah,
up by
for sure.
30 or they're down by 30, that person who does not stop competing until it's the end. And I think that's even professionally and in any role of your life, like compete to be the best possible version of yourself.
Yeah.
And your biggest competition is yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've definitely had to come to terms to
Mhm.
that recently, especially, but it's like, just stay locked into what you know. You've put in work and you've chosen the path you've chosen for some sort of reason, right? You either believe you're good at it or you were meant to do it,
Yeah,
um, or you possess some sort of skill
mhm,
that, someone else might not.
of course.
And I think that's what makes, people unique. And I think it's easy to often lose sight of that, when you're in kind of these big moments, you know?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to our stacking your wins and celebrating them, right? In order to enjoy the path you're on, I think sometimes you have to take a second to reflect, to be like, wow, like I've made so much progress on this path
Yeah.
and look at what I'm doing to win. And that goes back to competing, right? Like, how can you keep celebrating those wins, take the win, stay humble, and then go get another?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, I definitely agree, and, like, we were talking about, like, in terms of, like, interviews and stuff, like,
Yeah.
it had nothing to do with athletics. Yeah, but, like you said, I walk into that being like, "Tom, you just gotta compete. You
Yeah.
just gotta compete and throw out what you know and what think you offer."
Yeah. Of
And I think that kind of mentality never really steers me wrong, at least,
course.
um, because even like you said, we talked about, maybe a failure or a loss. Um, I don't have any regret in that, you know? Um, but yeah, that's kinda how I approach it, I guess.
Yeah. With all this interview talk, I think you should share with our fans my advice that I gave you. The really
Oh
good
my
the
god.
really good, like, slogan that I just want
Yeah,
people to
yeah,
hear.
yeah, yeah.
You should
Um,
tell them.
so Al was really big, like, these past 2 weeks on, like, getting me to understand this idea of, like, selling myself, right? Like, what makes you good at what you do? I don't like to talk about myself, which is kind of ironic because we have a podcast about it, but,
I
um
think what helps you talking about yourself is having someone ask the questions. The
yeah,
right questions, where in an interview, you don't know what's gonna be asked, you don't wanna seem like you're
yeah,
bragging.
I guess so.
It is hard.
Um, yeah, so Al's advice to me was to sell myself like I am a $1,000,000 Zillow listing, which I think once I thought about it for a little bit, I was like, "You know what? Kinda makes sense." And even if it doesn't make sense, I get it,
Mm,
you know? But
yeah.
yeah, that was good advice. So
Mhm.
anyone out there that's maybe struggling with, like, confidence, like a big moment, sell yourself like a $1,000,000 Zillow listing.
Yeah. And not just any listing, but the top most wanted
That's why I said
$1,000,000
$1,000,000.
listing. I just gotta emphasize to the fans, sell
Yeah.
yourself. And sometimes we don't know how to sell ourselves, but that's when you have to take a second, look back at your wins, even if they're small, and talk about them and talk
Yeah,
about what makes you you.
for sure. Yeah, I think in recognizing your wins, I think the ability to do that, like, provides a sense of, like,
Of
authenticity,
course.
like, to you, to, like, be able to reflect and be like, "Oh, I've done this, and I feel like I do this well,
Yeah.
and this is how I think I can contribute to a team," or something like that. Um, I think that is, you know, when you can be reflective in that sense, um, it's authentic, and I think it also brings, like, the best of you out.
Yeah. I love that. And I think sometimes too, especially going through the interview process, I went through it, like, pretty recently too,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes we're so set into experience, and, like, "Do I have enough experience?" Or
Yeah.
we look at maybe the person that came out before us, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they're 10 years older than me, they've been working in this field so much longer," and we kinda have
Yeah.
a little bit of self-doubt. At
For
least
sure.
that's what it was for me when
Yeah.
I was going. I just remember feeling that way, and I walked in and I'm like, "Should I be here right now?" Which wasn't the best thinking, but that's why you almost have to sell yourself because it's
Yeah.
not all about experience. Right? You could have 10 years of experience and this person with 1 year goes in and what they have to offer
Yeah.
from the heart can be more sometimes.
Yeah. I
Um,
think that, it made me think of that quote, like, comparison is like the thief of joy,
it
right?
is.
Where, if you compare yourself to somebody who's been doing something longer or may have more experience, like, yeah, obviously you're on the lower end of that comparison. But, like, if you step outside of that and say, well, this is the road I'm on, and this is why I think I'm good at what I do.
Yeah,
That really, I think, at least for me, recently I've learned that that makes, like, comparison go away entirely.
of course.
And you just at the end of the day, you just gotta do you.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you can do. And I think everyone kinda knows that, but our, like, our
Self doubts
mind
get in the
yeah,
way.
I think our minds, like, kinda trick us out of that.
Of course.
Um, but I think deep down, like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta be you.
Mm,
You know, I think if you do that, you'll find the right people, and the right people will find you.
of course. Yeah. And I think because when you're not yourself, say whether you're fake or you're pretending to someone you're not, so people will like you don't
Yeah,
really vibe with them then at the end of the day because it's not you. And not being yourself, I feel like doesn't make it worth it. You don't find your people and you might not be happy inside, but when you're just your authentic self,
for sure.
that's where you're meant to be. That's your circle of people.
Yeah,
Even if it's just two, those are your people who love you for you. And that's so important, I
yeah.
think.
I think, honestly, the same even goes for, like, the professional field
Yeah.
too, right? Just be authentic, be you, do the right thing. You'll land where you're supposed to be.
I
Yeah.
think it also makes it more enjoyable, your profession. If you can show up to a place and just be yourself and not have to put on this act to impress people,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
yeah, absolutely.
it makes it more enjoyable. And you're like, you know what? I'm supposed to be here. I'm making a difference by being myself.
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome. Well, best of luck to you in the next few
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
days. But I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Still kind of on the topic because we're talking about teaching and all, but
Mhm.
this upcoming week is Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yeah,
A little bit last
love
week
it.
too. Seems like your school celebrated it, so I
Yeah.
love that student gave that to you. And it
Yeah,
seems,
it was really special.
yeah.
Really special.
And I know that there's some teachers that really helped you, especially when you were sick and just made school a safe, normal place for you when life wasn't maybe normal at the time for you.
Yeah.
So, with that week coming up, I want to give you the opportunity to shout out a few teachers.
Yeah, we'll
I'm
be
sure
here
there's
all
so
night.
many,
We'll be here all night.
but just a few that you could give a
Yeah.
little shout out to.
Mary Fowler, family consumer science teacher. Um, yeah, she pushed me to start my business when I had the idea. She was there for me when I was in chemo. Always loved being in her class and, cooking and doing that whole thing. She organized a few fundraisers for, like, cancer and, LCH throughout my time there. So that was cool, and it made me feel like I was a part of the school community. Like,
Of
she
course.
found a way to bring me into the community when, like, every other factor in life was pulling me away from school. So that was super special. Chrissy Teigen, like, my work mom. No, not my work mom, my school mom. No, she definitely she kept an eye on me. She would, like, quietly report back to my mom with, like, how I was feeling if I went to school on, like, a treatment, like, day. Uh, yeah, just she was there. She, like, believed kind of in me in terms of, like, building my confidence as,
Yeah.
like, an individual when I necessarily didn't. And I think when people believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself, there's a little bit of, like, this, like, fake it till you make it period,
Yeah.
like, in that relationship until you actually, like, are like, "No, I'm not faking anything, like, this is what this individual wanted me, like, to see." Um, so she's super special for that. Um, Chrissy Zumo at the high school,
All great
Spanish.
people.
Yeah. No, she's the best too. Yeah, kind of the same thing when I was back, into chemo for a brief stint in high school. Um, she was there. She got me involved with her Interact Club, would help out the blood drive, just so many things with the St. Baldrick's. Huge event every year. I was fortunate enough to speak at it last year. Unfortunately, this year I was working in a school, so I couldn't get over there. But, it's always something special. And then in terms of, like, now and, like, in my professional career and, like, trying to become a teacher, I have so many mentors. Andrew Pelosi, the man, really taught me how to, like, hone in on my social studies teaching and how to use, like, my strengths of, like, what I feel is, like, you know, connecting with students and
Yeah.
kind of building rapport. He taught me how to use that kind of with, like, a social studies integration just through, like, talking through lesson planning with him and that kind of thing. Uh, Giuliano Giannotti, Spanish again. He's gotten me involved in the school community. He's, helped me kind of find opportunities because you're a substitute. It can be tough to kind of, get into the community a little bit. And he's definitely helped me find opportunities or bring me into opportunities that, like, I'm so willing to be a part of. So I think, yeah, those guys definitely, huge inspiration for me. And, I've only known them a short while and, like, they're so invested in me, which, I'm super grateful for. And I'm sure if I was a student, and I had those guys as teachers, I would have had the same relationship that I spoke about, the teachers that I had, kinda during my time as a student. Like, it gets emotional at
Mhm.
times.
Definitely.
It's like these people, they invested so much in me and they cared so much for me, and it's like, you know, you get, like, just this overwhelming feeling of, like,
Yeah.
how can I do this for somebody else?
Mhm.
Or how can I let them know that they had that kinda impact on me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely sounds like you're already doing the right things to have that impact on other students, and
I hope so, but at the end of the day too, like, I'm just trying to be me,
of course,
you know?
yeah, like we said,
Which
just do you. And
yeah,
sometimes we don't know the impact we have because sometimes people don't tell us, and you never know, but just because you're not being told you're having
yeah,
an impact,
yep,
keep doing you and keep touching
yeah.
people's lives.
I think that's huge, and, like, I love nothing more that when I, like, walk into the school and I'm given, like, 200 fist bumps before 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
and, like, there's been days when, like, my hand hurts, and I'm like,
That's how you know it's
"This
a good
is
day.
this is awesome."
Yeah.
I love it, like, I'm a culture guy,
Yeah.
right? That's what I'm about. I love, you know, being able to kinda interact and, like, just seeing somebody, even if it's a colleague, and just be like, "What's up, man?" And, like, it's cool. I think it creates community and, like, I had to give a presentation in my class actually about kind of teamwork, collaboration, for one of my graduate classes, and I was literally standing in front of the class and, like, was trying to articulate, like, this kind of idea of culture. When vibes are high, engagement's high, the environment's high, right? And I think it's such, like, an relatively easy thing to achieve, but you gotta be willing to put yourself out there, and I think people feed off of it. Like I said, I'm giving over 200 fist bumps before
Yeah.
9 AM, and it's really awesome. It gets me fired up to teach,
Yeah.
right? And, I think that kind of energy is reciprocated. So, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really special. I remember for me, it goes back to elementary school when I was sick and had my surgeries. I always remember in the cafeteria, I couldn't sit with the kids. So I had a chair,
Yeah.
which was cool. I was like at like the front of the whole table. But I didn't always love being singled out like that. So I would have teachers that would go out of their way to give up their lunch and I could invite friends to go
Yeah.
sit in the classroom with them and just people taking time out of their day to make my day better and kind of putting me first
Mhm.
meant so much to me, and that's what I try to do now with a lot of kids that I help, and I think it's those little moments that you don't think
Yeah.
mean so much, but it makes the biggest of difference, like,
Mhm.
even 20 years later, I'm still remembering those things and talking about it, it's inspired me to help others, so
Yeah, going back to your surgery,
mhm,
being young, um, I understand this month is NF Awareness Month.
it is
Can you
NF Awareness
tell
Month.
our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, so NF, it stands for neurofibromatosis.
Okay.
NF1 is what I have, the shorter way to say it. But what that is, it's a mutation of your tumor suppressing gene. So what that basically means is my body is not able to stop tumor growths from occurring anywhere in my body.
Yeah.
So it can cause significant severe complications or no complications at all,
Yeah.
depending on where they grow. So I have them on many different parts of my body. Some of them are just a little bump, some of them are big bumps. But unfortunately, when I was 6 years old, there was one on my spine, and it had caused my spine to grow inward and wrapped around my heart. So I had a pretty significant surgery, 14 hours on my back, and doctors removed the tumor. But they basically had to reconstruct my entire spine.
Yeah.
So they took part of my rib out, part of my iliac crest, a cadaver bone, and some other parts of my body to
Mhm.
build my back up.
Yeah.
But because of that, I had to pretty much learn how to do everything again since it was all neurological, right? It was my whole back. So had to learn how to walk again, how to sit up again, which was really hard to hear at 6 years old. It was really scary time for me. And then they put screws and rods to put my back together. And then a year after that surgery, the hardware was sticking out of my spine and causing me significant amount of pain. Went in for a second operation. This one was 12 hours, so a little bit shorter than the first one. But when the doctors went in for the surgery, they noticed that the hardware had fused with my spine. So it's actually
Yeah.
still in me to this day. Um, at times it does hurt. I'm a big runner, so
Yeah.
kind of crazy that I am, but the pounding can hurt it sometimes.
Okay.
I usually don't sit back in chairs because it will hurt. Um, but on the bright side, I have amazing posture and sit up straight all the time
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
because it's impossible for me to slouch. So
Okay.
that's a positive to it.
There you
But
go.
to get back to NF, it's not really well known. There's not a lot of research into it, and it is really hard to deal with, right? Like,
Yeah.
when I was younger, didn't know much about it, didn't know what a tumor was. As I got older and heard the doctors talking to my family about it, then you kinda wonder, "What is a tumor?" And now, because I'm older, I'm a lot more aware of where they are. It's tremendously challenging with my self-esteem, just because for me, I know where the tumors are, I can see them,
Yeah.
um, and you're always kind of like you look at a picture of yourself and the first thing I see is a tumor,
Sure.
right? Where other people look at it and they don't notice it. But
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of me, I know it's there.
Yep.
And you also really struggle with, as you get older, you can get more growths.
Okay.
It's typical as you get older in age, you're going to get more tumor growths. They can get bigger. So I've even noticed over time if a few that I have grown, right? And it's hard to see that. And you always are wonder like, where's the next one going to grow? Is this one going to cause a complication?
Yeah.
I definitely have a few that do cause me pain, but kind of pain that I live through.
Mhm.
Um, so it is tough. I know there's research being done on drugs that are in clinical trials right now to potentially
Sure.
reduce the growth
Mhm.
or stop them from spreading. But there's definitely a lot of work that has to go into it. So definitely a lot of people that I look up to. The Children's Tumor Foundation has started to do a lot of work.
Okay.
Um, Penny's Flight, which is an adaptive academy at Hospital for Special Surgery,
Yeah.
was started by two very inspiring people, Kate and Chad. They're two parents of a girl who passed away from NF, unfortunately. But they have done tremendous work. They've started chapters in schools that the younger generation has taken lead in and running and raising funds.
Yeah.
But the adaptive academy that they have at the hospital, they take kids out who are they have a lot more challenged than I was. They can't walk. They're immobile, so they'll take them surfing or they'll take them horseback riding. They take them snowboarding. So to be able to help a kid in a wheelchair go surfing, I think is
Yeah.
amazing.
That's
And I want to
special.
continue to give back to it. Definitely some things that I have planned, but I've never really talked about it, so it's hard to now like
Yeah.
find ways to give back and share your story.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. But yeah, so that's this month and hopefully we'll have some more people on to share their story with it.
Mm.
But yeah, but I guess I'll ask you how it is for you. You went through your health challenges, right? And then you meet someone with health challenges, but much different
Yeah.
to like shift your mindset to understand someone's while also still going through what you're going through.
Yeah. I think I think that definitely I think I definitely understand it a little bit more than maybe most people,
Yeah.
just because 'cause I've been there. I've been through it. I also think on the flip side of that, I can at times also be critical because, like, you handle things differently the way that I would handle, those kind of situations. Because we've both been in a lot of similar situations,
Yeah.
aside from, me having to do treatment. It is what it is, right? A medical issue is a significant medical issue. Um, yeah, I think at times it can make me critical, um, because everyone handles things different, and I think I apply my experiences where sometimes it's not necessary. Um, but it definitely is cool to have someone that you're, like, so close to that you can kinda find, like, common ground and, like, the experiences. Because like, oftentimes and, like, I've gotten to this point in my friends now where my friends, like, kinda get it and they're in that boat. But, like, usually you talk to people like, "Yeah, I've done some chemotherapy," a lot of chemotherapy actually, but, um, and, like, the response is always like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," which, like, don't get me wrong, I appreciate and, I love that people care about me. But, yeah, now, like, I'll say something to my buddies and they're like, I just got chemo again." It's just like, it kinda provides, like, a sense of normalcy, I think,
Yeah.
which I think is important. But, yeah, it's definitely cool to have someone that you can kind of find common
Yeah.
ground in those experiences with.
Yeah. I think you can also, not that with your friends and other people you can't be vulnerable, but with a person that knows, you're able to kind of say, like, no, this does suck. I'm scared.
Yeah,
I'm this time I have an MRI. And like we both know MRIs, right? I've been getting them since I was 1 month old. And
yeah,
there was a time I was getting them every month to check up on things that like we both can understand when we say, I'm getting an MRI tonight. Like, oh,
yeah.
that's gonna be
It's
tough.
tough, yeah.
And other people definitely think it's tough, but I think having someone who also has had as many as you or
Yeah,
kind of similar amounts, like it helps normalize your feeling a little bit.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll shift back to you. I want to ask you how you've gotten some good news from your doctors that I don't think you've fully shared with our viewers.
Yeah, maybe
I
not.
don't think so.
So,
Worth sharing twice if you
yeah,
have.
absolutely. In I believe it was March. Yeah, early
Yeah.
March. I had my, like, routine MRI, um, and no change, no growth, stable. Um, they kinda, like, start to after, like, a certain amount of time, they start to, like, classify it as, like, almost like artifact or, like, non-active LCH. I don't wanna use the term, like, remission because that's not what it is.
No.
Um but, it's as good of a result as you could hope for what, I have and what they're looking for. And my doctor, he was super pleased. They moved my MRI to every 6 months, so now only 2 a year instead of 4 a year.
which is like the biggest thing
Oh my god,
when you,
huge.
yeah.
It's huge for, like, the day after when
Mhm.
you're like, "Oh my god, yes, it's moved." Like, after a week, you, like, kinda forget about it.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure by the time I have to go for another MRI in 6 months, I'm gonna be like, "Oh, an
Yeah.
MRI again." It's like, "No, dude,
But
like,
less of that.
you went 6
Yeah.
months." You know what I mean?
That's awesome. We're all
Yeah.
very happy for you.
Yeah, so that's definitely been cool. It's definitely, like, allowed me to kinda put a little bit more priority on kinda my career and,
Yeah,
grounding myself in that and getting situated there, so, yeah.
that's awesome. Um, and then some other stuff, gonna shift this gear a little bit to not as much physical health, but it is also Mental Health Awareness Month,
Yeah,
which I think is so important, and I wanna talk about that. So, as you know, I'm a social worker, so mental health is the biggest thing for me, and
yeah,
getting people help and kind of ending the stigma to mental health
yeah,
because I think people are scared to admit they're struggling or just voice it because we don't want
mhm.
to appear weak, which you never are weak for needing help. But
Nope.
talk to me about any mental health struggles you've had, even if it's not connected to
Yeah,
physical stuff or if it is.
um, I don't necessarily know because I know how, like I know mental health is, like, a serious thing, and I guess maybe I don't wanna, like, downplay, like, other people's
Of
experiences in
course.
comparisons
Yeah.
to
I
mine.
think that's the thing that we're so scared to talk about stuff because we
Yeah.
don't think we have it as bad or my thing's not big enough to talk to.
Yeah, like, I don't wanna,
Of
I
course.
never want someone else to feel like, "Really, bro,
Yeah.
you bring that up." Um, but I guess mine, like, at times, like, maybe, like, confidence and,
Hmm.
the things I've accomplished or done or I'm working towards.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, definitely, it was definitely more so when I was in treatment, um, and the treatment wasn't working, and then I would have to go back into treatment. Um, that was definitely, like, I think the lowest point in my life
Yeah.
so far. Um, yeah, that was definitely tough in terms of, my mental health. And then even finishing chemo, that's I feel like at least for me when, like, the really hard, like, mental health stuff kinda kicked in because, you're so locked into chemo, I feel like. And then you get through it and you're like, "Finish line." The clouds are supposed to part and the sun comes down.
Yeah.
But really, that's not what it is. You just finished chemo, and then it's like, "Alright, well, now I'm gonna deal with chemo body
Yeah.
for,
And adapting to
yeah,
life.
the next year."
Hmm.
And, like, even, like, still, there's still things from chemo that, like, affect, like, my body.
Yeah.
I've had trouble like, I was always, like, a twig growing up, and then, like, since chemo and them, like, having to, like, force me to, like, gain weight just to, like, remain healthy to receive the chemo. Um, now I have trouble getting rid of the weight. And that's definitely I guess, yeah, talking about mental health for sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't, love the type of shape I'm in. I always want to be in better shape. Um, yeah, so that I think I would say now might be my biggest struggle is just trying to, I finally feel like I'm at a point where I've, stacked enough wins, meaning months like
Yeah.
with no change or like having to do chemo. Um, where I can finally start to, I feel like, build on what it is that I'm doing.
And I think I hear you say that, like when we talk about mental health, right, there are significant things where people have mental health disorders or things that they can't control, right? And then there's things where we're like, maybe I can control this, but at the end of the day, whatever you are facing, I think it's important to validate that everyone struggles, right,
Yeah,
with something. And sometimes people struggle every day. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it is small, but you never truly know the struggles people face,
yeah,
right? And I say whether it's the loud ones or the quiet ones, the popular ones, the shy ones, everyone's struggling.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate to help a lot of people that are struggling. So I know those struggles that happen with a lot of children's lives. But we don't know everything, right? And
Yeah.
there's no way to know everything, which is why I think it's so important to just be kind to people,
Absolutely.
right? You never know the day that they're having. You never know what happened
Yeah.
5 minutes before they walked in to see you.
Mhm.
So just be kind. And if
Yeah.
you don't know how to be kind, just smile at someone or ask someone how they're
That's it.
doing.
Yep.
And not just how are you doing, but how are you really doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like when's the last time you questioned that with someone? Um, that's my challenge for our listeners and
Love it.
just check in on people. And
Yeah.
we don't have to have all the answers. You're not experts, right? You don't know how to solve every struggle,
No.
but I think everyone can be kind and it costs nothing to be kind.
Yeah.
And that can change anyone's day from
Yeah.
bad to good or give them hope, right?
Mhm.
You always have that power to give someone hope. And I think that the mental health world can change if people were just kinder and didn't make it so hard for people to speak up and admit they were struggling.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
I
yeah, and
definitely
I
agree.
think future episodes, we're definitely gonna have more people on who have
Yeah.
been impacted by this.
Yep.
But even if any of you are struggling, just know that you do matter. And I think that's the most important thing.
That's it.
And everyone's unique and special.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, all right. So I think we hit a lot of important topics. This is a big month, right?
Yeah.
Mental Health Awareness Month, Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week is coming up,
Yeah.
NF, and talked about our success. Overall, really positive episode. I
All
think
really good things.
we
I mean,
are
when it's the
forgetting
time.
we are forgetting one of our favorite things. Quote of the
Quote of the
week.
week.
You're gonna go first on
No.
this one.
Go back, watch all the episodes. I always go first.
I went first last time and the time before.
All right, hold on. Let me lock in here.
And the funny thing is I have mine. Want you to go first.
That's horrible. All right, I didn't even think about this. Hold on.
Don't want to go first.
Yeah, go
Okay.
first, please.
So mine is the hardest line to cross is the starting line. So I actually saw this quote. I believe it's by Nike. I saw it in New York City when I ran the New York City Marathon. I was going to pick up my bib number from the Javits Center because they had a big expo,
Yeah,
which I was on cloud nine. I had to take a picture at every single station in the expo, had to buy every shirt in sight because I was that excited about it. But I saw they had a Nike sign out of one of the buildings walking to the Javits Center.
yeah,
And you think running the marathon, like the hardest part to get to is the finish line, right? You're running 26.2 miles and you're thinking, am I going to get there? Am I going to make it? But not even running related. I think often we have these goals and we think the hardest thing is achieving them.
yeah,
But sometimes the hardest part is starting. And once you
sure.
start, you got the hardest part done, right?
Yeah,
That's the hardest thing to do. So I want you to challenge yourself to start. Just start something and cross that starting line because then you're already one step closer.
yeah.
So that's my quote of the week.
That's a good one. All
Thank
right,
you.
I have mine, and I think this is my own quote. I
Oh,
don't think I've ever
quote
heard this
by Dom himself.
quote by Dom. The worst thing you can do is not do.
Okay. All
The
right.
worst thing you can do is not do.
I like it.
Right? You just have to go. You just have to go. And if you fail or you don't get the outcome you want, you know, you did.
Yeah.
You did it, you know?
And I think you're not really failing if you did. If
No,
you
no.
started,
Your perception might be a
yeah,
failure because maybe
I
you
agree.
didn't achieve the outcome that you wanted. Yeah, the worst thing you can do is not do. I think, I've started to come around to that. Um, you have to step outside that fear and just give it whatever it is you
Mhm,
have. Whether that be we talked a lot this episode about, job interviews, right? Just
mhm.
go in there and do it. Like you said,
Yeah.
sell yourself, right? Um, you just have to do it, whether that be, an idea you have, a business, a product you want to create. It can be crazy things, you even can even apply to finances, saving money, right? You just have to do, just start.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, the worst thing you can do is not do.
Good. I like it. Kinda like similar quotes we have.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah.
All right. Good. Well, I think that's it for this episode.
Yeah, thank you
Right?
so much, for joining us. If you're a returner, you are awesome. If you are a new listener,
You're
you are
also awesome.
yes, you are equally as awesome. Thank you so much for watching the Resilient Shift podcast presented by Better Days Company Long Island. This episode is going to be available on YouTube, and Spotify, and we're super excited for, kind of the developments that we have coming up, over the summer as the summer kind of approaches now that we're gonna have
Mhm.
a little bit more free time. New hat coming out, some new pieces to go with it. So stay, tuned for that. This latest run, um, only 27 hats this run. So even a little bit more exclusive than,
Mhm.
some of our other runs where we've been at about 30 to 40.
Yeah,
Um,
I like
yeah,
it.
so this is definitely a special one, um, to me at least. Um, and yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Um, we will be back next week.
Yeah. Do something kind this week, and what am I gonna say? Go Knicks!
I was gonna say something else, but yes, go Knicks.
What were you gonna say?
I thought you wanted me to repeat your Zillow quote.
Oh, I mean, that is a great quote.
I thought that's what you wanted me to say, but
Should put it on a
sensible.
business card one day. Just become a life coach.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I like it.
Anyway, make sure you're following Better Days Company, Long Island, and Resilient Shift Pod on Instagram and TikTok.